Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number 145A. This is an interlocking water return threshold. This is just a 6-inch sample piece, but it will serve the purpose of this video to demonstrate what it is and where you would use it. So what it is a threshold. That's what it is. Where you would use it would be in generally residential applications where you have a door that swings in. Although you could probably force it to work for an outswing door as well. Generally, residential doors swing in. Not here in Florida. Those generally swing out. Code is different because of those nasty high wind speed storms that seem to occur. So your door is going to swing in like this. This would be the exterior side. Nice degree or slope back. Any water that's going to hit the door is going to come back out. Now this is what's called a water return style. Now what would happen would be back here in this trough. Now be mindful that the door swings in, and to the bottom of the door will be attached your J-hook, your hook strip, your J-hook. Any water that were to get inside of the trough, you would normally have a couple, 3 holes drilled down in the trough. The face of this would then be filed ever so slightly so that any water that got in here would return back out water return. Generally, you would order that water return with a pan, an aluminum, a thin 20 thousandths at the most, very thin aluminum pan. So any water that did get in would just ride its way right back out and not collect or pool on the sill that's there underneath the threshold. So that's the concept of this. I have a sample piece of the hook strip that does come with this. And when the door is closed, it's going to look like that. When the door opens, that rides along with the door. When the door closes, doesn't get any better than a mechanical connection like that. Okay, it's not going to be great, of course, for an R value because you have metal, steel touching aluminum. But in terms of a mechanical seal, you can't go better than that. Some places, they're sure interested in keeping out the rain, the elements, the heat, the cold. Some places are interested in keeping out the snakes, the scorpions, whatever might be crawling under your door here in Florida, the little lizards, the frogs, the American Southwest scorpions. Yeah, that's going to keep them from getting underneath there. Chicago interlock are very common as well. I've had customers call me up and say, yeah, I think I have a problem with my door. Okay, what's the problem? Well, I don't know who to call, but I was taking the door off to paint it, and, I painted the door and put it back in and hung it. I didn't do anything. Now the door doesn't close. It, crunches when it closes. Okay. And I already know what's happening. So I tell them, reach down below the door. Do you feel anything there? And they say, oh, my goodness, I had no idea there was something there. That's your hook strip that's been nailed to the bottom of the door and been there for decades. So what they did was they obviously crushed the hook strip. So all we do is we sell them a new hook strip, tell them what to do, pull the old one off, nail the new one on, and you're as right as rain is the bottom line of how that happens. But you need the hook strip to work to make this an interlocking sort of principle is what that is. And that's where you're going to use this. I would suggest an interlocking threshold in all instances. I would even go so far as to make it interlocking, but then I might even consider trying to use an automatic door bottom that might be surface mounted if I had the room, or I might use a door sweep if I was going to be able to just elegantly touch the front of this, or at a very minimum, I would use a drip cap to cover that. Any water that hit the door would come and then ride off and then back out and down. Belt and suspenders approach when you can accomplish it in the world of weather stripping is, in my opinion, always a good idea. It certainly serves to increase the cost of the opening, but you stand there when it's 12 degrees outside and you're in front of your door that was previously not weather stripped very well, and then you can stand there and put your hand over the margins between the door or a pair of doors at the bottom of the astrolabe and you not feel that cold or the loss of humidity. You're going to say to yourself, that was well worth the investment. Overall depth or the width of the threshold, they've got it at 4 inch. Overall height is at 7 inch. I would say yes to that. Okay. Width of that plateau area where the door will sit over is about 1 1/8 inches. Okay. So let's now switch to the screen view, and let's take a little deeper dive into all the supporting documentation, and we'll show you how the hook strip gets installed. Here is the item that we are looking at, the 145A. We have it listed in the site in lots of different lengths. 2 foot to 8 foot generally is what we would keep it in stock in, and pardon me, we don't keep it in stock necessarily at all those lengths. The lead time is always listed, below the add to cart button, or at least is currently until there's a redesign of the site, I suppose. But the point of the matter is, you can have any length that you want or that you require. Be mindful that after 3 foot lengths, the cost to ship generally becomes noticeably more of a percentage of the cost of the threshold itself, and will at some point exceed the cost of the hardware itself. Certainly, if you ordered an 8 foot length, you'd notice the freight would be quite costly. The purpose of me saying this is that if you have need for a custom length, by all means, let us know by ordering the next longest piece or pieces, and indicate in the comment field here whether or not you need a custom length, and we'll give you that custom length. We'll cut it to length, and we'll drill those countersinks at the proper distance from the edge and the proper center to center as well. Here is the option I had mentioned about the water pan earlier. If you're doing aluminum, select an aluminum water pan. You can select a brass water pan, but generally you would keep the metals the same. You don't want any sort of galvanic corrosion to occur from disparate metals, and I can't say as an expert whether or not that would be a concern over mixing brass and aluminum, but you'd want similar materials. I can't think of an advantage of having brass as a water pan with an aluminum threshold. The extended description down below gives us the outline of the item, which we have gone over. However, bottom of door must be rabbeted and cut precisely. Yeah, that's very true. Let's take a look at what they're drawing our attention to there. So roughly, here's our threshold. Okay. Okay, just to kind of finish that off. Anyway, so what we're really concerned with, and I'll eliminate that. What we're really concerned with is we're going to have a door that's going to swing in. Okay, and your hook strip is going to go here, just to draw it very excessively out of scale, and you'll nail it to the bottom of the door. That's how these work. So you can see, and then, frankly, in reality, this is going to be much closer. Your hook strip is going to fill this area very tightly here. Okay? That's how that's really realistically going to happen. And when they say that you have to cut that door precisely, you do. You don't have very much room in your hook strip. The mouth of the hook strip from here to here is not very great. It might be 3/16, and if this dimension here is 100 thousandths, you've got to cut it pretty accurately. You've got to be right on the center line of that lip here, right in the center line here. And be mindful, you've got the head of the screws that are going to sit here as well, so you've got to, pardon me, not screws, nails. The head of the nails will be there, so it must be cut precisely. Another thing that people do that you might want to consider, and you do see it, there's no doubt about that, is to rabbet the bottom of your door. Same hook strip installation, but now I've brought that door down a little bit longer down in this area here. Okay, why? Well, it's a better design, quite frankly. Having a rabbet at the bottom of the door serves the very purpose of what you're trying to accomplish with a hook strip, the fact that it's interlocking. But you're creating a rabbeted edge by means of adding this interlock J hook. And we call it a J hook because if you turn it on its end, you can see why we might call it a J. See what we're thinking there. So you can rabbet that, and you can bring that rabbet down, below the area of where the male portion of the interlock is going to be. Very common to rabbet the bottom of the doors. Okay, it would be considered a better caliber installation to do so. And I would argue that it's going to be more effective at keeping weather out as well. So that's what they're talking about there. Bottom of door must be rabbeted and cut precisely. Link here to the installation instructions that we can review. Not a lot to see here, and this is a very generic document. Measure twice, cut once, that sort of business. They do talk about coping the threshold, should you have a type of threshold that you would need to cope or trim around the stop. You would cope something around a profile. Okay. Secure it with the fasteners that are supplied. Sure, it will come with probably a number 10 by 1.5 or maybe 2-inch flathead Phillips drive screw. Now, there's also a link here below this page to the manufacturer's link within our site. And when you click on that, here's that page. Not only you can, from this page, review all of the Pemko products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog, which is here. And let's fire that up. And when that document loads, we're going to do a find function, Control F on our keyboard, for 140, just 145. Actually, yeah, just 145, and then let that let your computer index the document, and then you'll be able to start finding all references to 145, of which, of course, there are several. But we will get to the page where the 145 can be seen, and here it is. Now, we're not searching 145A because they don't have a character in that space, because that's where the finish comes in. A for mill aluminum, B for architectural bronze. That means it's a solid brass threshold, and that would be substantially more expensive than a mill aluminum threshold. But if you want a solid brass threshold, they offer the 145 profile in solid brass, onto which you can leave it mill, and you would probably leave it mill if you wanted it to age or patina with time, with exposure to the elements. You can do it in a satin brass, a polished brass, an oil rub bronze, things of that nature. Bright dip gold. The balance of these are all on aluminum. So everything here is on aluminum base material except the B, which is what we call architectural bronze, but people would just call it solid brass. BDG, bright dip gold, D for dark bronze, G for gold, PW painted white, SN for satin nickel. The point of showing you the catalog is you'll notice that there is another hook strip, the L-shaped hook strip. Yes, very original, the way that the names are come up with here. Now, an L might be what you need, because that L hook is obviously going to fit right there, and it'll nail it this way. Okay? Not common to use an L hook, but they do exist. And they also make J hooks in an aluminum based material as well. This is going to be steel with a galvannealed coating. It will look a grayish sort of color. It's a galvanized coating over steel, but they'll make hook strips in aluminum as well. We don't sell very many hook strips in aluminum. Can't really think of a reason to use aluminum over steel with a galvanized coating. Short of an application where you simply don't want steel in something. Over time you might have some surface corrosion that would occur on the steel itself. I'm grasping at straws. I don't know why someone would insist on an aluminum hook strip. We don't bump into it very often. Maybe sell one of them a decade, that kind of thing. So they're not common for us. The rest of the interlock thresholds can be seen in this residential threshold section. Lots of interlocks, and really where they change, the important part is, and here's our rabbeted feature shown right here. Really smart way to do that. Adding that drip cap is the belt and suspenders approach. I would always have a drip cap out there with this installation. Pemko, of course, sells that drip cap. I I don't recall the part number, but let's take a look. Pemko drip cap. Yeah, 345. So this client with a 145A, you'd be doing a 345 would be your drip cap that you would use. Any water that hits that is going to drive itself off, and the point is that it will end up on this sloped leading edge, and away it goes. Different heights that are here, and that's when someone says, I want an interlocking threshold, the two questions are, okay, what's the height? That's probably the most important dimension. And then, what width are you looking for? So this is crucial. We're assuming the door has already been cut to height. Okay, you can see they get up quite tall. You know, anything beyond 7/8, in my opinion, really starts to become a tripping hazard. But, you know, if you've got a house built in 1963 and it had shag carpeting put in the 70s, they cut the doors down, and here you are in, 1999 putting in hardwood flooring, yeah, you're going to have that issue where you're going to have a tall threshold or a new door. So, pick it, I suppose. But 7/8 is a good dimension. 1.25 inches is not uncommon. 1 inch is not uncommon. You get into the lower ones and they will not have the principle of the water return because they're just too short. There's no water return principle here as well. But if you have need for a interlock threshold and you're not doing a water return concept, then suit the one that meets your needs. And if you want the factory to not provide weep holes or a weep hole preparation, indicate that in the comment field so they don't drill any holes or notch the face of the threshold. And as we scroll through, we'll find other options here as well. Okay, we're in the residential catalog, so there'll be other items that are residential in nature here as well. So real handy way to review what threshold you might be looking at. Okay, let's wrap up this video on camera. In conclusion, the 145 profile is a very common threshold when it comes to its overall height, when it comes to its overall width. You can count on seeing a combination of about 7/8 and about 4 inch pretty much all the time. Smart little design, and has been around forever, interlocking thresholds. I can't really say, but I'm sure that this is quite surely 19th century technology. And again, while metal on metal is not going to give you necessarily the best R value, it's going to keep driving rain out, that's for sure. It's going to help keep critters out for sure. Where you'll have other material that will have a higher R value application for insulating. I would say that it's not going to be as long lasting as something, like the 145 type interlock threshold. It's very common where people have had these installed decades. I mean, just literally decades. The home that I grew up in the Chicago area had an interlocking threshold on the front door. That house was built in the early 60s, and in the 80s and 90s when, the 90s, early 90s when we lived there. Let's back that up a minute. I'm older than that. The early 80s when we lived there. That threshold had been there for 40 years by that time and worked fine. You don't want to tamper with those sorts of things unless you need to. Or what I mean to say is being curious about the way the hook strip works is fine, but you don't go replacing it unless it's obviously fatigued, and you'll know that because the door won't close, and you'll have to really pull the door to get closed. And I'm sure I had mentioned it earlier, maybe I haven't, but I had a client of mine call and say, yeah, I didn't supply the residential doors on the job, I supplied the hardware. And the customer, who I know outside of work as well, he says, I can't get my door closed. I mean, well, what happened? He's like, I don't know. The painter took it off and put it on the side and, hung the door and says, your door doesn't close. I says, reach your hand down below there. Is there something nailed down there? He's like, hey, hang on, let me look. Yep, there's something nailed there. And then he figured it out. They obviously crushed the hook strip. I says, no problem. Come on down. The hook strip's a few dollars. Come get it. Give it to the painter and say, nail it back on. Make sure it works. Problem solved. So you do sell a lot of replacement hook strips only. And that hook strip from Pemko is a 61. I'm going to give you the part number. I think it's Z61. Yeah, it is. So if you need to order this hook strip only, you'll order it Z as in Zulu, 6-1, and then the length. So Z61-36, replacement hook strip. It'll come with the nails, the whole 9 yards. You'll be in good shape. The name Pemko is quite synonymous with all things weather stripping related, and I would very much encourage you to review that full-line catalog that we dove into earlier, because if you're looking for solutions, their catalog becomes an idea book just because they have so many possible extrusions that you might be able to solve your weather stripping problems with anyway. If you have any questions on the 145 in a mill aluminum finish or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.